Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler.
Well, good morning, and good morning, and welcome back here to Inside the Game here on the National Soccer Network. Jonathan Turner alongside Nathan Wangler. He is off to, right there on my left. On my right, whatever. Either way, he's over there. Anyways, but it's Thursday morning. It is the last day of July. It's hard to believe, isn't that crazy?
It is. It's actually, I have to pay my bills. So thank you for the reminder. I got my little to-do list because I'm ADD, I'm OCD, I'm all those things. So I actually have a list of to-dos on a day-to-day. So paying my bills, that's one of them today. So thank you very much for that reminder. That just put a damper on everything. So yeah, I gotta get that done. But yep, the last one of July. Wasn't on the show yesterday. I thought you and Ryan did a good job. Had a noon game for the Caps, and obviously you were talking about getting the wisdom teeth out back on Monday when we started our show on Tuesday. It's getting better now. The tooth pouch is shrinking, so we're doing better. We're healing up in that regard. So yeah, everything's checking out well there. But I thought you guys did a great job yesterday. A lot of good topics, a lot of good conversational stuff. Obviously the end of the USL 2 season coming here pretty quickly, and then getting into school sports. So a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Even in the MLS world, Messi back to top form, assisted in an added time goal yesterday to help Inter Miami get the win. He never skips a beat, even though he did skip the All-Star game. He hasn't skipped a beat with Inter Miami, so it's good to see him back and going. And yeah, a lot of stuff to cover.
A lot of stuff to cover. Yesterday, we had a great conversation. I'm going to ask this question of you because you're a gamer yourself, and I asked Ryan this question. It was a poll. I want to actually ask and put. We did a poll yesterday. I'm going to get into that here in a moment and talk about that. But I asked him this question yesterday, and we discussed it for probably a good 5 or 6 minutes about FIFA, the video game FIFA. And I know there's other games you can play too. But have you ever played FIFA? By the way, are you a FIFA soccer guy?
FIFA, I got FC 25 right now. I think that's the current one that's out there. But yeah, same difference.
Same idea. Okay, difference. So if you're playing in that game and you're playing in an online competition, whether that be with a friend of yours or a non-friend, are you selecting a domestic team here in the United States, an MLS side, or are you picking a team across the pond?
Yeah, probably not domestic. Probably going to go with, I mean, it depends. You got different online modes. You could do like a little fantasy draft. But yeah, the majority of my players would not be from the United States. Maybe one or two of them. But no, I'm not. I mean, Inter Miami, if anything. Maybe LA Galaxy. But even then, no, probably not going with an MLS side. There's no real good reason to do that in my mind, but no. And I'm assuming Ryan said the same thing, at least listening from what he was covering yesterday.
He did. And I said the same thing again. And this is where, when we start again, continuing to talk about the gap between the MLS and the rest of the world when it comes to talent and how this league is set up and established, it goes to show you that when we as fans, as gamers, as everyone around the sport start to accept that, I think that's a place for us to maybe start the process of getting to where we want to go. Again, if we're talking about finding a way to get close to bridging the gap between us and the rest of the world, it would have to start here in this country with the acknowledgement that we don't know what we're doing. And more importantly, not that we just don't know what we're doing, but we don't know how to solve the fact that we don't know what we're doing, right? And we look to the U.S. men's national team and U.S. soccer as like this governing body that their job is to, we look to them, and this is what we're supposed to do, and then it all trickles down. Right? I mean, we have so many different youth leagues in this country. We have so many different college environments in this country. We have so many different amateur leagues in this country There are so many different variations of the game being played across this nation that we don't know what's up and down. We don't know what's east and west. And all we're all trying to do is to get our hands on the quote unquote money that's hanging off the tree that happens to be, right now sitting in Illinois and will soon be in Atlanta, because that's what soccer is in this country. It is a money grab. There's some money there. There's some money there. It's just money.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest gripe that we get when we hear from people around the world, is that in order for it to change here in the U.S., it can no longer be pay to play, right? Because that's the prohibitive factor in all of this. Because if you want the grittiest players in the world, go look at football. I mean, you could argue that maybe outside of your quarterback, like your quarterback. I would say maybe quarterbacks, but outside that, most of these players come from inner city America, where they're fighting for their lives in a lot of cases in those environments, and are fighting to get the hell out of that and change their lives. No. And there is something to be said about that. You can't go to a basketball court in America and not see that in most cases. You know what I mean? So you look at those types of sports, right? And the grittiest players on earth play football. You have to be a gritty player. You cannot. That is not for the weak-minded or the weak-hearted. You have got to have the toughness to play in that environment. You could argue that soccer, you don't need that, but you take a bunch of players who pay $10,000 to play on a club team and put them up against, this same level of player, but those kids didn't pay and they are fighting for a scholarship to go, to get out of that neighborhood that they're in. I would argue that that team would win every single time over the kids that paid.
Well, and it's not just about the money to get in. Here's the problem that I run into, and I got this comment on one of our videos because I was actually talking about this Ryan's first time on our show, and mentioning how the game in terms of the sheer amount of numbers is growing in the United States, but growth can be something that is deceptive, because if we're just focusing on the sheer amount of kids who are playing soccer, 14 million is a lot. It's a good chunk of the population that are playing the sport in the United States. So from a sheer numbers perspective, and I've talked about this, TJ Afachirochi, who's one of the coaches over at Grand Valley State, he was at Caledonia High School for the longest time. He talked about how, to that degree, yes, numbers-wise, the sport is growing. However, are we getting the most out of it? That's the next question, and obviously that is a overwhelming no, at least on the men's side, right? And I think it's important that we draw that distinction between the men's and the women's side, because when you start bringing this over into the women's side of the aisle, it's much different. It's a much different world here in the United States and what the men's game is. And again, this all circles back to how do we compete on the international scale. At the end of the day, this is a USMNT conversation, and people might think, it gets redundant talking about it, but it is an interesting topic. And again, when you look at 2026, when you look at the biggest competition in the world is coming to the United States, it is vital that we have these talks. So the sheer number of kids continues to go up. 14 million is a lot, but pay to play is not just the initial fee that you pay to get in, right? It's the travel, it's the food, it's the hotel, it's the every weekend, it's all of these things. And you can say, and I've seen people say this, and I saw this one specific comment on social media that said this, and maybe I can pull up what it specifically said, but he said, pay for play is not the issue. It's that we have too many players and we don't know what to do with them. Maybe. But what else I'll say is that you can also say that there are free options, and there are free options. There's rec league, MLS Next Academy is free, or the MLS academies are free. There are free options for players out there. But to get farther down the line, to get to the next level in soccer, you can buy your way into those positions. Now, I'm not going to say that it's not the same case in other sports. I've seen it in other sports. And this is why when we talk about nepotism specifically, I always have to say we got to pump the brakes a little bit, because nepotism happens everywhere that you look. There's nepotism in hoops. We see it with the likes of Bronny James and a lot of these other stars kids that are coming up that in a lot of ways have not earned a position on an NBA court, but they're there because of dad. And we see that at a minor level. In the sport of football, I get it. You got to be tough and gritty and all these other things. We see nepotism all the time in that game. Yeah, I've seen it firsthand, actually. It's the reason why I stopped playing my last 2 years in high school, right? Because nepotism sucks and rugby's better anyways. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But it happens there. It happens in baseball too. It happens quite a bit in the sport of baseball. How many ex-players' kids have we seen that have gotten drafted in big-time spots just because of the namesake? Those things happen. But in soccer, it's not just the nepotism. How deep your pockets are will a lot of times decipher how far your child can go in this sport. They're going to get more attention. They're going to get more training. They're going to get more people focusing on them. And again, can you rise to the top just based on merit alone, just based on how you move with the ball and how you play? Probably. If you are that naturally gifted, I've always said this, and I remember my dad always saying this to me, like, if you're good enough, they'll find you. I mean, you think of someone like Patrick Ajiman. I mean, that kid was playing Division III soccer, and he's playing for the U.S. men's national team. Now, you could talk about how, yeah, I mean, he's probably not the greatest of all players, and we saw in the Gold Cup, specifically in that Mexico game, he just fell flat on his face. He couldn't finish any opportunities. And he's going to have to really show us something, especially coming up in September, if he wants any chance of being on that World Cup roster. If you are good enough, they will find you. But to not be able to afford the training and the access to resources makes a huge difference. But the other side of it, and Ryan also brought this up, JT, and it's something that is uniquely American because we are dealing with a different struggle altogether. And that is when you throw in the college game on top of the professional game. This is something that Europeans, they have a hard time registering. You know, I watch these reaction videos, and I think it would be really interesting for you and I to do more reaction videos on this podcast because I think people enjoy seeing that stuff. But when they watch videos of Happy Valley at Penn State in the whiteout, or they watch, you know, the Big House Michigan Stadium, or they watch, insert any SEC game here, you know, South Carolina, whatever. When they watch the commotion in the pageantry behind college athletics in the United States, they're amazed, right? They almost kind of stop and they're like, this is college? Wait, hold on a minute. This is college athletics. Like, yeah, this is the feeder. This is the feeder to the NFL, right? This is the feeder to the MLB. Now, the MLB is a little bit different. You'll get kids out of high school. You'll get international products. You'll get a lot of different things. The National Basketball Association, again, college atmosphere. This is the feeder. This is what feeds the highest levels in this country. Yes, you can play on the AAU circuit, but there's no such thing as a, you know, you're not going to go pull guys. Like the G League is not the place you're going to go pull a lot of guys. Those guys are on the bubble, you know, and you might get a few 18-year-olds who are like, all right, you know, I'm going to go play in the G League or I'm going to go play overseas and then come back and play in the NBA. But the high school to college to professional pipeline is the way in those sports. In soccer, what is the pipeline? You can play USL. You can play these leagues. You're also playing in college. You're also playing in high school. You're also over here. There really is no such thing as an affiliate. Yes, they have their academies, but it's not a clear, succinct pyramid. And when people are like, oh, there is a pyramid. Yeah, but like, you could, depending on who you ask, there might be different levels, different rungs, different teams in different places. That is when you hear these players who are so much farther along, and these U.S. men's national team players talk about how it would be advantageous for us to just tear it all down. That's where it kind of starts for me, because that same pipeline for all the other sports in the United States is not what it is in soccer. And so that's where the confusion comes into play. And when you're talking about these leagues outside of schools, right? They're businesses at the end of the day. These coaches make money. They have to make money. The nationals, they have to make money. They have to make money, because if they don't, they go away. And so how do you make that money? Well, you convince those players, hey, you have to play for us if you want a chance, right? We have the relationships with the college coaches. We have the relationships with the professional coaches, the people in the world who are going to get you to that next level. If you don't play for us, and if you just hang around in high school, I'm just going to play high school ball, or I'm just going to whatever, it's not going to happen. Right. And this isn't a relationship that's like how it is in baseball, where, okay, you finish your season, you go play summer ball, you come back and you do this. No, in a lot of cases, while they may break their contract and play both, which again, we talked about is not really the right thing to do. You shouldn't break your contract. If you sign on the dotted line, you sign on the dotted line. Right. But I'm going to steal your line here. Right. Herein lies the problem. It is a butting of heads, and the fact that we almost completely like disrespect or throw away the high school game. We're like, yeah, you're not going to find the best kids there. It's just somebody's dad's coaching them. You're not really going to find the best players there. The rec league teams are the kids who are playing for free because mom and dad can't afford the thousands and thousands of dollars to play all those kids. Well, they're not, not worth our time, because they're not making any money for us. The business component of what soccer is in the United States is the thing that's absolutely killing it. It's killing it in more ways than one.
Yeah, I obviously the money component to this is obviously, we've talked about it time and time again, is prohibitive. Of finding and acquiring the most successful and most talented players in our country. And yeah, there are free options. Okay. And I want to put this in perspective so that people understand this. We talked about a little bit yesterday with Ryan, is that every league in this country thinks they're the best league. I have yet to talk to a league owner, league management, whoever, who doesn't think that their shit doesn't stink. Okay, so let's first put that out there, okay? And it's no different than the mentality. And if you ever watch, a good example of this is if you ever watch D3, Mighty Ducks 3, okay? These unbelievable kids who have won their state championship and somehow were picked to go to an international competition to represent the United States in an international cup and beat the likes of it wasn't Russia. Who'd they play? They beat in that. I forgot who they beat. Was it Iceland? It was Iceland who they beat.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So and then what happens? They get plucked out of that and they get picked to go to the best private school in all of Minnesota, right? And they show up and they're the top dogs. No, there's a varsity team that's already there. And they're like, we're the varsity team. And so it turns into this, varsity team. It's got all these awesome players and the ragtag players who are down here who had to prove themselves once again. But what's the mentality, right? Let's be honest. You've got these ragtags, and for the most part, they wanted to probably give up, right? They wanted to quit, and then they didn't, right? But there was this back and forth about it. Charlie debates he's quitting school, but comes back, right, towards the end, because Emilio Estevez comes in at the end, after Hans had died. And so it's like, but what is, like, that's the perfect example of, like, every league in this country, and then anything that they don't believe is, like, measures to them, like where you are. I mean, we look down upon it. It's a society in our society, and I don't know if it's necessarily unique to the United States, but again, wealth and notoriety and status. Those things matter. They matter. They don't matter as much in other sports, but in tennis, it matters, right? In golf, it absolutely matters.
Yep.
In hockey, hockey is an expensive sport. It is, I think, by and large, the most expensive sport. I'm not talking about maybe the playing. But every aspect of that sport is expensive. Lacrosse is up there. But lacrosse, for the longest time, was a sport that was more geared towards those who had more affluent areas of the country. I think it's still that case. I mean, Duke, right? Think of the best schools that had the best lacrosse programs. Duke was one of those programs, right? And so there's this thing about status. There's this thing about having money, being affluent, right? Coming from affluent areas.
Yep.
So I say that because, again, yesterday on the show, Ryan and I were talking about this, and I asked this question of him. If you are a player and you have been given the opportunity, your coach walks up to you, and it's the MLS coach, okay? And he's like, hey, you could be our 25th man or 24th man on the first team's roster, or you could be a starter on the second team. What would you like to do? The choice is yours. And Nathan, I'm going to ask that question to you. What would you do? Like, would you take
second team in the MLS? They have two different sides in the MLS?
No, it's not. One second team would be in like MLS Pro. Yeah. Right. No, it'd be like, second, it's a second team. So it's like, LA Galaxy 2 would it be. Would you pick LA Galaxy 2 and be a starter, or would you pick LA Galaxy 1 and be on the bench?
I mean, where's the contract? Where's the money? I mean, that's I guess that's my question at the end of the day. Is there a league minimum in the MLS? I mean, from a career perspective, I'm probably taking the LAFC.
I'm going to say the same thing about whether you are offered that English Premier League contract. Everything is the same. All things created equal. Okay, you as a player. Okay. Right,
$104,000, by the way.
Fair, okay, but again, I take the money aspect out of it for a second. I'm talking about development. I'm talking about opportunity. What would you rather do? Would you rather be on that second team, or would you rather be on the bench or be on that roster, the MLS side, but knowing that you're not playing a lot?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's value in playing every day. There's value in being in that starting lineup. I'd probably take the second tier team. All things being equal. Now,
you and Ryan said the exact same thing. It's funny how this is, and I asked, and this is where I was asked this question when I was in high school. I was legitimately asked this question. I was given a choice. My junior year of high school, we were blessed with 3 goalkeepers. I was the third. And my coach walked up to me. We had just won a state championship back in the year before. I had a ring. I had a varsity jacket. Okay, I was not necessarily a member of the team. I was pulled up for the playoffs. I got a chance to be a part of that process. And I was given a choice in my junior year. He goes, John, you could absolutely play every single game on the JV team. Every game. Starter. You know that. You're going to be a starter. You're going to play every single game. Or you join us, and will probably never see a minute. Next year is your year. All these guys are graduating. Your senior year is yours, but you'll be with us. What do you want to do? I didn't even give it a second thought. I go, I want to be on varsity. I knew I wasn't going to see minutes. I knew I was going to be sitting on a bench, probably taking stats for the entire season. I knew that. But the reason why I wanted to be there is, one, and I'll say this to any MLS player out there, it doesn't matter, is playing time is great. But when you're there, who do you think is going to see you every single day? Your head coach is going to see you every single day. He's not relying on somebody else. He's relying on what he sees and what his staff sees. So Team 2 might be absolutely a great coaching staff, but if you rub them the wrong way, they might not recommend you, even if you're a starter, right? So who's to say that would be a thing, right? Take that part out of it. You get to have a chance to showcase what you can do every single day to that coach. He knows how hard you work. He knows what you're doing. He knows everything about you. And so he can trust that when he thinks about you, he can make a decision about what he knows and not what he's hearing from somebody else, regardless of game film, regardless of anything else. And so I absolutely. You should never pick Team 2 if your goal is to be an MLS player. I'm not saying that it's a bad option. I'm saying it's not the right option. And I say that because, again, playing in a game on Team 2 is not the same thing as playing in a game on Team 1. And playing in a training session on Team 2 is not the same thing as playing in a training session on Team 1. Because if all those players were able to play on Team 1, that's where they would be. Right? And so, because we could argue this all day long. If you took the first 11 players of every MLS team in America, and they would 1 through 11 on every MLS team, you could probably argue that all those 11, intermixed, would probably be on any team in America in the MLS, right? Boom. It's the 12 through 16, the 12 through 17, that's where things start to get kind of whatever. And then from 18 to 25, that's where things go really kind of a whole shit. And so if you're going to sit here and tell me that I have a chance to be in that 24, that 25, and practice and train every single day in front of the head coach and his team, I'd rather be there. I'm building rapport with the team. I'm building rapport with the coaching staff. They're seeing how I work. And that puts me in a way better spot than what I do on Team 2 as a number 3 on their roster playing against teams that are of lesser value and lesser talent than the team I'm playing on. That's my perspective on it. And you can't change my mind on that. There's not a single person on earth that would ever change my mind on that. And it's not because I don't think that there's value in playing on Team 2. But if you're telling me that playing on Team 2 is going to get me there faster, I was already offered the job. You're going to sit here and tell me there's not a minor league baseball player on earth right now who's playing for the Whitecaps, playing for whatever AAA, AA, single A, that they get the call up to go sit in the dugout. They're not fucking doing it.
No, of course.
That's what I'm saying. So they're not going to. They're not going to. But somehow in soccer land, we're like, oh yeah, I want to go play. I want to go start. Now again, if the question is about starting versus not starting, a completely different question. Because again, starting on AAA, starting in the majors, completely different, right? But again, being called up to play in the majors is the single greatest moment in a baseball player's lifetime, right? Yeah. And then the moment you step on the field and play, completely different. I would argue that you being asked to be on the roster of an MLS team, whether you're 1 or 25, is probably the greatest honor in your soccer lifetime. Unless you're being offered something to go play on the U.S. men's national team. Then that honor goes a little level. Like, holy crap, right? That's different. So right. I asked that question because it goes to the mindset of the player today. It goes to the mindset of the type of players we're seeing. I don't think for 1 second that Lionel Messi, if offered that, would have ever considered going to the second team if it meant being on that first team and training with them. I don't think there would have been even a moment's thought. Absolutely, nope, I'm going to be here. I'm going to go there. You know what I mean? Michael Jordan, asked that man. There's no way on God's green earth that he would have picked the B team over sitting on the bench on the A team. You know what I mean? I feel like that he would never have done that. Now, granted, he didn't make his varsity basketball.
Everyone's goal is to get to the top level. I mean,
absolutely.
This seems. I mean, it seems fairly obvious to me, regardless of what the capacity looks like. Because the truth is if you're in the room, if you're wearing the uniform, if you're on the bus, if you're in those places, if you're in the atmosphere, you're going to give yourself automatically a chance to get better and be better. But I at least when you talk about the value of playing, the only opportunity you're going to get to actually show what you're worth is if you're playing consistently. Right. So, but again, we're talking about in a fantasy world where all things are equal. All things are not equal. Right. Just being on the A side is going to completely change everything. But I thought it was interesting when Ryan said this the other day, and I thought this was a really good part of the show when you guys were having this conversation about how, you know, yeah, maybe the mentality of the players that they want to play and that's top of mind. But I also think that's the generation of player that we're dealing with as well. I mean, think about where we are now. Even from a cultural perspective, there is no such thing as bide your time and wait. There is no such thing as ride the bench and give yourself time to try and prove everybody wrong and get that starting spot. The grass is always greener with the athlete in 2025, whether it be over here, whether it be over there. There are other options out there, and they're not going to be afraid to explore those options in order to just get themselves on the field more. We've seen it before. We've seen players, at least in the college game, transfer to lesser situations just to have the opportunity to play more. But yeah, no, you're right. I guess I'm curious what your point is on this, though. Like, what's your point in saying that no one's, that no one in their right mind would take
because in order for a player, so there, again, this is the point of this is, again, not knowing up versus down and east versus west. The players are more concerned about playing than growing. You know what I mean? And challenging. When we talk about, yes, the grass is greener, okay? If a player has it, if they have it, they're going to be on the field. I don't think there's a coach on earth, I've said this before, that if there is a player like a Lionel Messi, a Christian Pulisic, they're going to be on the field.
Yeah.
Okay, so the people that, like, again, generational players are on the field, okay? Patrick Mahomes is on the field because he is a generational player, okay? Nick Foles, yeah, right? Right, yeah, Nick Foles. Remember, he was a starter for like a minute? He's not a generational player. He is a one-hit wonder. One-hit wonder. He had a great season. People thought he might be the second coming of Tom Brady. No. Right? And he did, he kind of went to because he didn't have the attributes that made him to be that generational player. Right? We could all argue that if Tom Brady, with what happened with him, holy crap, right? We can talk about that. Drew Brees gets knocked out of a game and he comes in and holy crap, that doesn't happen. Do we see Tom Brady? I think we could all argue that we probably would see Tom Brady, but when? Like when? I mean, Kurt Warner was plucked out of a damn grocery store, for gosh sake. You know what I mean? Come on. And so, but what my whole point with all of this is that we stopped worrying about developing and only worried about playing as players. Absolutely, I wanted to be on the field. I wanted to be on the field more than anything else. And my coach and I, we talked about this. He goes, John, if you grew up a mile, to the west, you would have been starting in every game, like from a freshman on at another high school.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, it's like if you were 15 pounds heavier or lighter, you would have been a varsity player as a sophomore. Like, those things are real things that can happen. But if you're going to sit here and tell me that, what did I learn from in that environment? What did I learn from sitting on the bench? What did I learn? I learned, one, to be patient. That patience is a virtue, and that if you're patient and you work your ass off, that good things can come from it. Not always, but they certainly can. Okay? I also learned how to train at the highest levels against the best players in the program. Right? I was taking shots from players who were faster, stronger, and better than me at soccer, and I was getting better because of it. And if I had played on JV, that wouldn't have happened. Period. So I learned to play at a higher level because of that. And my confidence as a player, when I left school and went and played in other environments, I was so much more ready because I was playing against stronger, better, faster players than me. Okay. And so that is the value in playing, whether you are playing in a game or training in a very, very good environment. It's the same reason why I would pull players up who are on my JV team and pull them into our environment so I could challenge them and see how they would do in that environment and see if they would be willing to step up to the, step it up, right? Can they rise to the occasion? So my point is that players, I'm not saying all players, I'm saying that development has turned into selfishness. I want to be on the field. I want to play.
So let me ask you this in this way. You're Serginho Dest. You're Weston McKennie.
Yep.
You're one of these guys, and you're going through the MLS Next Academy, right? I know we've done the comparison between the MLS contracts and what we see overseas. Let me put it this way, right? Because I think this is the more, at least when we talk about it, and you guys were talking about it yesterday, and Ryan mentioned it, what do we prioritize? If we want to grow domestically, it might be worth investing more into the MLS, right? But if we want to be good internationally, we might have to switch up our priorities a little bit. But I think this is something that follows along exactly what you're saying, but I think it expands it out a little bit more. And it comes down to the best players that are from this country. Okay. You're offered a spot in the Bundesliga, in Serie A, any one of these places, but you're a guy, right? You're not crucial. Maybe you're not necessarily in the starting 11. You're not a sure thing. You got to keep fighting for that spot year after year. From your perspective, and again, you talked about how when you played against those players who were on another level than you, right, it made you better. You want to be surrounded by the greatest. Even in the broadcasting world, I'm the same exact way. I want to be surrounded by the people who have been here, done that, have done major league games, because they understand what it takes to get to that point. Not only that, they have the connections. That's important too. That's the other side of it. But you're offered a position. Again, you're Dest McKennie, you're any of these guys, and you get an offer to be a guy over there. You also have an offer to play in Major League Soccer here in the United States, grow the game domestically, but you're not just a guy here in the U.S. You are the guy. You are one of the guys. You are crucial. You are a star. Your name can be everywhere. You are a top American player playing in an American league. And again, it's uncomfortable for us because we're used to our leagues, like Ryan said yesterday, being the best in the world. But you want to know why they're the best in the world? Because the players made them the best in the world. Because they want to come here to play here. It's not a swan song like it was for David Beckham. It's not a swan song like it was for Lionel Messi. They played their best years, but that would take those players investing in the domestic product. But again, if you were to ask me, would I make that decision to, I want to play here in the US versus playing with the best over there who are going to continually push me to do better? And it all comes back. I think the Christian Pulisic documentary, if you haven't watched it, it's fascinating. It is fascinating because I understand why he went over there as soon as he did in his life, because he wanted to play not only with the best, he wanted to be pushed to a new level. And again, the whole pay for play thing, if you're as good as he is, people are going to cater to your every need in the United States. It's not the same over there. It's not the same. You're going to have to earn everything that you get in different parts of the world, not necessarily here. So I think this is maybe the more pressing question, in my personal opinion. Do you come to the MLS and be the guys and really try to bring this league to the next level? Because we saw that with a lot of the old, mid 2010s, those guys, the Landon Donovans of the world and all of those players, the Michael Bradleys and the Tim Howards, like, they played Major League Soccer. And I think they did it with the intent of, again, growing the game domestically. You even heard Alexi Lalas on our show talk about how that was the proudest moment of his career, was coming back and founding that league in the 90s. Now, mind you, it was a different story back then. But do you make the decision to stay around here and bolster the league that's here in the United States, or do you go and try and play with those guys across the pond, which you think are ultimately going to make you a better player? I think I know what your answer is. I mean, I to be completely honest, in 8 out of 10, we took the poll online. All right. We took the poll online, but that is, in my mind, there has to be a sense of urgency from the best players that are from here to bring the domestic game to that new level and show the young American kids that they're here. We've arrived. You can go watch them. You don't have to go over to England to watch the best players who are from this country. They're in your neighborhood. They're in your communities. But until we have that, Jonathan Turner, we are never going to be in a position to be culturally relevant enough to develop good enough players to go compete for a World Cup. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And so we can be content with where we are. We can be content with, we'll get out of the round of 16 or we'll get out of group stage and go to the round of 16 and yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, if that's our ceiling, that's our ceiling. But if everyone's going to keep saying that that's impossible and that there's no way that culturally we would ever shift that direction, well, I guess it's not really worth ever having the conversation. But I think that's when you stretch it out a little bit more, that's the question in my mind when you talk about those top-end players, because they came from the academies here in the U.S. You know, that's the thing that frustrates me the most is that they're developing players, but they're not staying here. That's the problem. It's almost like you think about a MAC program in football, right? You think about like a CMU or Western Michigan. You know, Brian Kelly was at Central Michigan. Brian Kelly's not known for being a Central Michigan head coach. You know, he's known for Notre Dame and LSU. Think about all the players that have.
I'd argue he's also known for Cincinnati too. I think he was
Cincinnati. Yeah, that too.
I think that's what Cincinnati is what got him his. You know, got him
Grand
to
Valley
Notre
State
Dame.
too was I mean his run there.
I want to first off a target or not target, but I want to answer this first question. Yes, absolutely. Every player in America that can go play overseas should absolutely go overseas. Absolutely. The only way the U.S. men's national team bridges the gap is if they go across the pond. Okay, they will not get it here. Okay, so if you can get across the pond, you need to go. All right, and go as fast as you possibly can, and get and to be fair, squeeze as much out of it as you possibly can, and then bring it back. Okay, again, because if you live in Spain right now and you're a basketball player, yeah, there's a Spanish league, but where do you want to go? You want to go to the NBA. Okay, if you grew up in Croatia and you're a Croatian basketball player, you can play in the Croatian basketball league. Or you can go play in the NBA. You're going to go in the NBA, okay? I'm sorry, but that's just it. I mean, that's what it is. And so the thing about soccer, though, is, to be fair, is there is like, so the NFL and the NBA and MLB are like obviously the largest, baseball, major league professional sports in the world here in the United States. Soccer, like the Premier League NFL, but you could also say Bundesliga is NFL. You could also say that, League MX, is like is like NFL Mexico. I mean, you could argue that those leagues are like, so if you went there, players from all over the world are going to travel, want to go play in that league. But I still think that the equivalent of the NFL or like the NBA for soccer would be the Premier League. I think that is like the measuring stick. There are other leagues that are close. You can start getting down to South America and the Brazilian leagues and things like that. But no, they should absolutely go because that's what the best players are. You go where the best players are. The best players will train you. The best coaches, the best everything. Everything there is the best. And so you go to where the best is. Okay, and it's no different than here in the United States. If you are a player and you happen to live in Michigan, you are going to find that there are probably between 3 and 5 clubs here in Michigan that you could argue are the best. So where are you going to go? You find the best, right? And sometimes you take your entire team, and sometimes you just take yourself. Okay, when it comes to personal training, right? You go see the best. Who's the best personal trainer? Well, there's one here in Michigan that goes and, Aaron Bird is one of the most well-respected and high-level personal trainers in the area. He trains U.S. women's and men's national team players at his environment in Novi. Argue he is the best trainer in Michigan. So if you're a player, you're going to go see Aaron Bird, right? The best. We all want the best.
Right.
Okay, and so, yes, the MLS Next Academies are the best. Right, because they're going to have the best resources. They're going to have the best of this. They're the best of that. So if you are a Michigan player and you're being asked to go play for the Columbus Crew Academy, which happens to be an affiliate of the Columbus Crew, you're going to go there, right? Especially if that's the one you're being offered. Now, if you're being offered the Columbus Crew and Houston Dynamo, now it becomes which one of those programs is the better one for me, right? You're now comparing apples and apples, not apples and oranges. But if Columbus Crew's offering you and then you get an offer from Vardar, there's significant difference between those two organizations. And so, yes, if you're a player, you go where the best soccer is. And to be fair, that is the best thing for American soccer. The more players that can go over there, the better it is. We're not talking about if we're talking about U.S. men's national team and them having success in a World Cup, that's it. If we're talking about the development of the league, well, then that's a completely different conversation.
How is that it, though? I don't
What do you mean?
understand how that's it. We have more players playing in Europe right now than we ever have.
Yeah, but again,
That hasn't necessarily made a difference.
yeah, but we always say there's a difference between having there's a lot of players that have it, or they have something, but they don't have everything, right? And just because we have sent players across the pond doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate into wins in an international environment.
No.
However, the more players you send there and the more players that are getting that training and the more players that go and do all of that from a generational standpoint, that will continue to make our soccer environment that much stronger, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a telltale sign. If again, we can argue, we know right now that I think, was it Japan, China, and like Korea are like the three most popular places outside of the U.S. for baseball. Is that what it was? I think it was like, maybe it was like that. I think, but
yeah,
it was like we're like
Japan and
in
Korea
there.
are probably in
Okay,
there. Yeah.
so right, if a player in Japan is trying to get to the Major League Baseball environment, right? That's the goal, right? And they may say, well, the goal is to play in Japanese baseball land, but in their major leagues, in their professional leagues. But to be fair, if you're a baseball player around the world, you want to play in the Major League Baseball arena. And so, but do we look at countries that send us a lot of players and say that's a great country for prospecting? We absolutely do, right? We look to places like down like Venezuela, right? That's a country that we look to and say, great baseball players come out of Venezuela, right? We know that, right? We know great baseball players have come out of Japan. So we can say to send scouts, into Japan to watch baseball games, to send scouts into Venezuela to watch baseball games, to get the next whoever into our environment to play in Major Leagues one day, is that awesome? And there's something to be said about that. We are sending more players now across the pond than we've ever sent before. And they're big-time name players, too. So the more that so I'm not saying that we do a terrible job here in this country. I'm just saying that the reality is that if you are looking to play the best isn't here. You have to go someplace else to get the best. And that sounds terrible to say, but it's the truth. And so and then what happens is you're hoping that those players will come back and they'll be, big impact players in our men's national team. I argue that they're not the right players. Okay, there's the best, and then there's the right players. And we keep talking about this. The right players versus the best. Again, there are we could argue that you could take a lot of players and put them on the dream team. Right? You could put a lot of players on the dream, on the NBA international team, right? There's a lot of players you could pick. All right, you only get 5. If you're picking your 5 starters, right? Who are you picking? You could arguably pick 20 to 25 players in the NBA, and they would all probably be just as successful as the 5 they pick. Right? I mean, let's talk about that for a second. Talk about all these like these team environments. We're taking an all-star team. What makes them successful? There's a lot of, again, the right players, right? I mean, so I think that there's something said about the right players, and then there's the best players. And in a lot of cases, it might be both. They might be the best and the right fit. But, because again, you think about this. Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, LeBron James. Do you think that they would gel well together on a court if they were playing at the exact same time? Like that, can you imagine like the two of them on the court at the exact same time? Like, I don't know if that'd be a recipe for success. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious how the two of them would play. And then you throw in like a Scottie Pippen in there. You throw in like, what do you call it? a Rodman in there, like holy crap, man! Like that team would be. I don't know what that team would even do. It would be kind of fun to actually watch. I'm not gonna lie, it'd be awesome to see that team on the court. But could you imagine what that would look like, and how would that actually work? So, I think that trying to balance players and balance their characteristics and their personalities and their talent level, all of those things, matter when you're talking about the U.S. men's national team. And I don't think we're putting the right players, in with our best players. And I think our best players sometimes aren't the right players. Again, they're not the right players. And I would argue again that maybe what we think is great and what we think is best also isn't necessarily the case. And I think we also have high expectations for our U.S. men's national team for consistency. I mean, if we compare, we're looking for players to be like their best all the time, and that's not a realistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Pulisic can't go out there and every game be like the best player ever.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have off nights. He's going to have a night where he just doesn't do well. I mean, Ajamani, you were just talking about, right? I mean, he had an off game, and we're talking about how he had an off game. I mean, for the tournament, he wasn't terrible, but he had a bad night on the last game of the tournament. And what did he do? He didn't. We were talking about how he didn't play well in the final, and we're measuring him now on that. Is that the right thing for us to do? I would argue probably not. I mean, what do? We judge a quarterback. They have an MVP season, and in the Super Bowl, they shit the bed. Worst. That's terrible. I mean, is that the right thing for us to do? I mean, aren't players? Yes, in the biggest moments, you want your best players to show up, but I mean, it's possible that doesn't happen because the other team game planned the shit out of them and just did everything they could to throw them off their game. I mean, that's a real thing. So, yes, I mean, to answer your question about across the pond, we should absolutely be sending our talent over there, getting as much out of that as they possibly can, and then bringing that back with them. And then more importantly, we need players that want to play regardless of how they feel about the game that they're about to play in, to play at their best, to want to play at their best, to want to fight like hell, to want to show up for their country and be everything they can possibly be. We want 11 Captain Americas. We want 11 Supermen. You know what I mean? We want 11. And I'm not talking about their strength and their power. I'm talking about we want people who we want them when they get on that field. It's like they're bleeding red, white, and blue through your pores.
And that's when I look at the Gold Cup. I realize obviously it didn't end the way that anybody wanted it to end, but that's really kind of the hope, right? That will kind of set the standard as to what the mentality of this group will be moving forward. And I think watching the videos of Pochettino after that game, I think if you ever have any doubt as to whether or not he's invested or he cares, it's pretty obvious to me, watching, behind the crest. And I think U.S. Soccer does a good job of this on their social media stuff, but showing those angles of it, he does. And you can tell that. Whoa, oh boy.
Your camera?
Where'd I go? Oh, man.
I don't know.
Oh, hey, all right, I'm back. But that stuff matters to him. But it's we have to create our own sense of urgency because we don't have to qualify, and that was something that you asked the other day. And I listen. I sometimes when it comes to these rhetorical questions, I don't do very well with it. Because rhetorical questions are just that, they're rhetorical. I mean, you can answer them any way you want, and nobody's right. Nobody's actually right because there's no concrete evidence to show one way or the other. I mean, we could sit here and be like, oh, we wouldn't qualify. Really? Okay, well, we qualified in 22s to say we wouldn't qualify now. I don't really understand that. And I think that would create more of a sense of urgency, especially when it comes to the likes of Pulisic and, Yunus Musa and all these players that opted out. Rhetorical questions are what they are, but we have to create our own sense of urgency, like you're saying. And so that's the hope that those types of games, and you hear the players talk about it. I mean, you heard, Sebastian Berhalter talk about it a lot. Now, I don't know if he's going to have a spot on that final team, but Diego Luna was exactly that same way too. And the way that he was able to fight through some of the ailments that he did get in that World Cup. I mean, got elbowed in the nose. He practically broke his nose and he was still out there playing. We have gutsy players. We have that. But now it's how do you put all of that together in order to make something that, again, is worthwhile, that can instill a lot of hope in people. I don't get the point in staying in this low place where it's just doom and gloom all the time. Yeah, you can say that we're not ready to go win a World Cup. I agree with that. I mean, I don't think we're going to beat Spain or Germany or Argentina or any of these A sides. I really don't. I mean, there's a lot to be desired still yet before they can even get to that point. But in terms of the grittiness and the fight, I thought Pochettino got at least that out of this team in the Gold Cup. Talent-wise, are they there? No. I don't think they're at their best form. But again, this is the reason why I hate when it comes to international competition, how much distance there is between matchups, right? Because you go from the Gold Cup, now you got to wait all the way till September to see exactly what you got out of this team. Who's going to be in camp? Who's going to get that call up, right? Because, and I think it'd be interesting to talk about who our 11 is, because I've been seeing a lot of that and been seeing differing opinions on who should be a part of that 11. But I think we're starting to get that. But does that translate to the matchups in September? Does that translate to the buildup going into the World Cup, which is just barreling down the pike at the moment? I mean, it's staring us in the face. Same thing for Canada, same thing for Mexico. You know, is it okay to have setbacks? Yeah, Canada had a massive setback. I still think they're a better soccer side than a lot of people give them credit for. I think Mexico still has to figure a few things out. I think they have great individual players. I don't know if they're necessarily World Cup worthy, but for the United States, now is when you try to take some of what you got in that Gold Cup and you try to build off of that urgency, and you try. And I think they got a bit of that scrappiness. And that's why it was important to get the players face time that they did get in that Gold Cup, because you're probably not going to get it in the World Cup. Who do we have? You know, Chris Richards, Malik Tillman, Diego Luna. These are all names that I think really could help in the long run. So, yeah, I think it's a mentality thing, JT. I really do. And we always brought it back to that. And that was something that I mentioned a few shows ago. You know, Mauricio Pochettino talked about it. Like in other parts of the world, it's not just a really fun, entertaining game. They just don't love the sport. It's life or death. It is life or death. And it has to be that way for our men's national team players if we want to see any level of consistent high-level play. It has to be. It absolutely has to be. There's no other way.
I know that you don't like rhetorical questions. I think they're great. I think it's great. If you're asking me, you know, if the men's national team is qualifying for a World Cup right now, my answer, based on what the body of work has been over the last 24 months, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The body of work has nothing else to do with anything else. Again, I watched this team fail to make the World Cup here a number of years ago. It obviously, again, and it's one of those things. 2018, they didn't play in the World Cup, right? And so you ask yourself, okay, we're only, 7 years ago, or we're 7 years removed from that. Maybe 8 years, obviously, going into next year. But you know, they didn't qualify, and they had the likes of Christian Pulisic, right? And so, what do they have now? Who is their marquee player that's going to lead them to the promised land? And if we think it's Christian Pulisic, well, he hasn't done it yet. Okay, so who is going to do it? Who is the X factor in this whole equation? Who is it? And we might have no idea. But again, they do not have to qualify. And I know it's a rhetorical question, and you could argue that, well, hey, since we're not having to qualify, maybe we're just going to coast through this thing. I think it's a terrible way of looking at it, but that might be the mentality. I don't know. But the body of work, I don't think they qualify. I don't think they qualify at all. To be fair, I don't think it's close. Who are they going to, who's going to go from CONCACAF if they had to qualify ahead of them? You know? And so, again, in our world, it's a completely different world now. Canada is more relevant than they've ever been. Mexico is still relevant, right? And so you've got Canada, Mexico, and the United States. You've got Costa Rica in there. So, I struggle with this, and as much as I don't want to say it, I don't know if it can't be unsaid, and we can't not say it. This team did not perform well at all in 2024 or so far in 2025. And I'm curious how they will look here, obviously, in September, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'd rather be wrong here than right. And obviously the draw, when the draw happens here later next year and we know who's playing who in the World Cup, that will be a telltale sign as well, if they can get out of the group. Yeah, they're not winning a World Cup, people. I mean, we're not kidding ourselves here. It's not happening, okay? I mean, we can be the most optimistic people on earth, okay? It's like, to put this in perspective, this is like the 1980 men's hockey team, but they're playing Russia every game. Okay, so that's the reality. Okay, so let's just put that out of the equation, like right away. They're not winning a World Cup. It's not happening. Okay, so let's just put that over there. Now the question becomes, what are they going to do? And if they can get a favorable group and get out of group play and get into the elimination rounds, how far can they go? That becomes the conversation. And we should continue that conversation. And what I think, instead of us picking our 11, which I think that we are so far removed from being able to do, I don't know if you can even, I mean, you can argue maybe 4 or 5 players in there, but the full 11, I don't know, I want more time. But what I think would be better for us is to start to have the dialogue of how far this team could go if everything would be like, fall into place. The right players, how far could they actually go? That's where my thought process is with all this, is how far could they go? We did ask this question yesterday on social media. We did ask the question, if the U.S. men's national team had to qualify for the FIFA World Cup, would they? 63.6% of you said no. Okay? So 63% of you said nope, they would not qualify. And so it's not, I think a lot of people feel, and I would be hard pressed to find, 6 out of 10 fans that would think the opposite. You know what I mean? I feel like that would be right. And so, that's my thoughts. But hey, we're excited continuing this conversation. Episode number 127 is officially in the books here on this Thursday morning, the last day of July. Don't forget to subscribe, like us, share this with your friends and family. If you like where you're listening, keep coming back for more. We'll continue this conversation about the U.S. men's national team, about the MLS, because the MLS, again, is not the best league in the world. It's not even close. And I think that that's what we have to keep saying over and over again. They say in order for you to enter into recovery, you first have to admit you have a problem. And ladies and gentlemen, our problem is the MLS is not the best league in the world. It's not even close. In order for us to solve that problem, we have to first admit that we have one. And we have one. It's a big one. That's Nathan. I'm Jonathan. We'll be back here again, same time, same place, right here on Inside the Game.